you're scrolling, scrolling, and you see AI is making everything slop. How is AI going to take over the world? AI is the new religion. And that's just the first layer. You scroll a bit more. Climate alarmism, fake. It's all fake. Designed to wrest control of the middle class. Wars and rumors of wars. Oh, I can't listen to any more podcasts right now. It's all about war, 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 war. Is it real? Are people really dying? Are people suffering? How can we tell? Is it fake or is it performative? Is it all a terrible propagandistic lie? Is it the mystifying that we are needed to keep the working class under control and make them willing to become soldiers so that they go fight in the wars that we're not even sure are happening? Advertisements. Oh my gosh, we haven't even gotten to advertisements yet. Statements in the culture war, arguments over whether this particular figure or that particular figure are intended as insults and outrage and provocation. How did everything get so bland? Oh, all there's theories, right? There's theories behind all of this. It's aliens. It's always potentially aliens, right? It's the hidden families. It's the oligarchs and the money markers and the bankers. Pacts with the devil. Is there any way to make sense of this? I mean, the blandness, the smoothness, the smoothing over of everything with the AI and the advertisements and the propaganda and the rhetoric, and it's still also so bland and yet chaotic and yet horrifying and yet the same. Keep scrolling. Is any of it real? Okay, well, we'll turn to fantasy and sci-fi, right? World building. Surely that is going to feel real. It's typically described as world building, right? But do these fantasy lands and other planets, I mean, maybe Mars, maybe I don't know, galaxies far, far. Does any of it at all seem real anymore? It all feels the same, bland, fake, surface smoothed. Why would this be? Why does everything seem so fake and not terribly joyful anymore? This is our quest on the Mosaic Ark. Welcome. How do you like our new tech, right? Do we look better now?
Well, I
Here.
know you do. Your light looks beautiful.
I basically just turned it up, right? I was sitting here in the darkness. We in season 4 on the Mosaic Ark, welcome everyone, are
Yeah,
here
it's
to
getting dark.
bring light to the blandness that we're. Isn't it funny? It's like I actually am feeling alarmed by spending too much time listening to podcasts and scrolling and doom scrolling and stuff. And then I realized, of course,
Yeah.
one of the most depressing things about it is it's all the same. Right.
Right. So why do you keep scrolling? You have to ask yourself if it's all the same. Why do you're looking for a dopamine hit of some new information?
Something
It's
like,
like
yes.
your
Yes,
brain is being to keep scrolling, to keep on the hamster wheel. Because
there's got to be something. Yeah, hasn't there? There's got to be something new, and there's nothing new. And it's like, okay, so we've been, guys. Thanks to you for joining us. Welcome to new. What do you call them? Sailors. You're not, if you're on a cruise ship, you're not really sailors. Passengers. Welcome to our new passengers.
passengers. Yeah.
Passengers. I've been watching a lot of the Love Boat. We got to get in the vibe.
Oh, I should do that actually. I should pretend I'm 10. It's 1978 and it's what was it, Friday or Saturday night? Love Boat, then Fantasy Island.
I
Yeah.
think it was Friday. I have this, so
Yeah.
I realized I would watch Love Boat and Fantasy Island while I was drawing, and of course because I was that kind of I was a little older than you, so 12-year-old. I think it was 12 when Fantasy Island started, or Love Boat and Fantasy. Anyway, I dated all of these drawings, and and the thing is, in my head they took a long time to do, but it was like a couple hours, and I would put the date on them, and so I realized I could correlate. I mean, so much time travel can I do that I can go back
That's
and know,
wonderful.
and I haven't done it yet, like which episode of Love Boat I was watching while I did this particular sketch. Pretty cool.
That's really neat. I like that. That's very cool.
This is are you really a historian if you can't date your drawings and now correlate them with the Love Boat? I'd have to do Fantasy Island too because they were on back to back together, right? But
Yes.
what was I thinking about as I did this eye, right? I was usually drawing at that point pictures from 17 magazine, so they're like girls,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, or my dog, or a lot of it was doing portraits.
Was no Tiger Beat?
So my sister would get Tiger Beat, and I was too embarrassed. I was a little older. You're more her age, right? So clearly,
Yeah.
you youngins were doing Tiger Beat, and I would steal it.
Yeah, you gotta get just the Sean Cassidy in just the right light, right? And just sketch him there.
and
Yeah.
and yeah,
Like
Sean
Steve
Cassidy and
Barrett and
no, you're right. And David Cassidy was busy being on Rolling Stone and looking. Now I'm very horrified to realize, quite disturbing. Sean
quite
Cassidy was
disturbing in Rolling Stone. Why?
I look it up, right? Just this.
No, I've seen these images. They were he was a hottie, but what was
Yeah,
disturbing about it?
but there's something about the way he's posed and shirtless and stuff
Oh,
in this
no,
picture.
I don't remember the details. Maybe I will look it up again because it's a pretty famous picture.
Right. Well, things that we know now from doing all the scrolling
Yeah.
is to look for the clues about what's behind all of this, right? Are you actually seeing reality? Or are you seeing some kind of projected horror that's meant to seduce you and draw you into whatever world we live in now, right? And
Hmm.
I think the David Cassidy shoots were part of it for sure now.
Don't destroy my childhood.
I'm going to just well, so it's interesting with Love
No.
Boat thus far. I'm halfway into season 2 now. This has been really dedicated watching over the last week or 2 weeks. Um, they they all end happily, right? There's a number of in season
Mhm.
1 tends to be couples getting together, or pretty lighthearted most of it. Although they're already bringing in some of the harder stuff. But season 2 has had more couples come on thinking they're going to get divorced and then don't.
Yeah.
Like Julie's parents at one point are going to, and she does her cruise directing really well, and they realize they don't really want to be swingers, and so they end
Oh,
up it's great. I mean, I was like, I wish I'd
oh,
been old enough to be able to pull
I
this
wish I
off, except for at
I
that
wish I
point
hadn't heard that.
my dad had left in 1977, right? This is the year after he left off to be a swinger, right, with his youngin. So given that he was already doing that, I'm not sure her technique would have worked with my dad.
Yeah, it's real interesting they had that as a main theme because I can remember at that age, there were quite a few people and kids in the neighborhood
Hmm.
who had 2 homes to go to, right? Mom and dad was very different, or dad wasn't there at all. In some cases, it was just mom. And, yeah, it's the parent trap fantasy, right? The divorced kids want their parents to get back together.
Oh yeah.
So that's what they were doing there. Fantasy Island was interesting because it was right after it, and it was more like, now that I think of it, it was more like A Christmas Carol, right? These people, they think they want something, they get it, it turns out horrible, and then they change their mind and they learn something by the end of it and they leave, wiser,
Right.
like Scrooge did. But Fantasy Island, despite its name, was the opposite of Love Boat, which was all fantasy. Like all the time. Like you're gonna have a lovely match and you're gonna get married or you're not gonna get divorced and everything is a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't always like that in Fantasy Island. In Fantasy Island, people left. Sometimes they left things they thought they wanted something and left without it, but they were wiser and so they were better off. So it wasn't really a complete fantasy. It was exposing the fantasy as not really real.
I'm gonna have to search that. It's got those down next. But I mean, the thing is, Love Boat is trying. I mean, Love Boat. It's a surrogate family already, with the
Yes, true.
captain. The captain is father, and the I guess the doctor is
The uncle, the
uncle.
confirmed
Yeah, the
bachelor
doctor.
uncle.
The doctor is the swinging bachelor uncle, and
Hmm.
then the others are the kids.
Right. Right. And they all dated, right? And then Julie at one point was going to marry, was, I can't remember his name. He's a very famous British actor who was a guest starring on it after he
Mm.
did Brideshead Revisited. And it wasn't Jeremy Irons, it was the other one.
Fines? Who did? I don't know who did Brideshead.
No.
Not Fines.
Oh gosh, yeah,
Oh
it was
yeah,
really,
that was too long ago.
yeah.
Other
But,
famous British actors. So this is, I mean, I feel like we have talked about this and I don't remember with who, but that's okay because we'll carry on with this theme of what's real and what's not, of the feeling of reality of the characters coming in because you know them. Like Loretta Swit has been on several times, is in,
mhm.
not Hot Lips characters, but Hot Lips characters, right? So that
Yeah, she got typecast.
they carry they well, but the thing is, I think that's some of the fantasy of the fun of it. It's like here they are, they're the guest stars and passengers, and occasionally they have get the passengers meant to be stars that then the crew gets all excited about, like, oh, it's so and so, the great author, and you're going, that's Bert from Soap. What are you talking about? Right?
Oh yeah.
So there's the fantasy, the Love Boat fantasy of well, one of cruising, right, which we have now acknowledged that this is what we're here for, to take you on our cruise, and teach you things, but as a family, I mean, they do end up with sort of, life lesson discussions a lot, like the one
Did you?
when Isaac and there's one black actress that's been in a couple of them now, confused. There are two or three of them that are the same. But anyway, she's been on several times, and in this one, she's a PhD student, like studying Black history, and I'm like, why are you on a ship? Why aren't you in the
I don't know.
library? She shows up on the cruise ship with her books
Always, yeah.
and
That was a recurring theme too. People, I'm there to do work. I'm like, you're lollygagging. Who are you kidding?
yeah, what are you doing on a cruise
It's a
ship?
cruise
Oh yeah,
ship.
I had to get away on a cruise ship for the weekend. Right. Anyway, so she, starts feeding Isaac all of this Black history, and they both get really, sort of uppity and rude about the guy who's, again, I don't remember anybody's name. He's meant to be doing this sort of ham bone, like, singing thing, but it turns out the captain has to come tell the kids, look, you're being rude to this guy, because he was actually the only one who, like, struck out Babe Ruth or something, but because he was in
Oh,
black and he was in the black leagues, he couldn't play in the regular baseball yet, and he, is one of
mm,
the ones that made it possible for you guys to be here being snooty. And so, they realized, oh yes, we needed to learn that lesson. And I mean, that was the, the tough lesson level of things that they had
yeah.
on the Love
A
Boat
little
at that
heavy-handed,
point.
but yeah.
Well, I mean, they were, and okay, so we're getting off topic here because we really don't want to do the doom scroll, do
We
we?
never do that. What is wrong with us tonight? Anyway, go
Get
ahead.
off topic? I don't know.
No,
Realizing that we've having guests and guests and guests, and we've been trying to be like responsible hostesses for weeks
I know.
now.
Yeah.
And
No,
we
I'm going like, okay, everybody, I'm going like this because we were just talking right beforehand. I'm thinking we can relax a little bit tonight because it's just the two of us.
right.
It's like, oh, okay. I just need to do a little bit of prep, not too much.
Well, but I
We
mean
love it. We love having guests on. But we've been talking together for 4 or 5 years, so it's easier when we're just talking to each other.
this is true. This is true. I mean, it's stressful
Yeah.
being a cruise director, and and
Well, you want everybody to be happy who comes on board. You
that's
do.
right.
That makes perfect sense.
And we're good. We definitely have cool plans. I am watching. If you guys, if you follow me on social media and you keep liking stuff and I notice, you may get roped in, right?
She
I'm
means it.
I do. I'm sort of trying to find people that, as we say, we invite guests on to help us. We're very, sort of deliberate about that.
Oh, we love talking to them too. They've been great. I've just loved talking to every one of them. So interesting, doing so many different things.
Well, but because we also have a project, which is to guide you guys out of the ocean of the doom scrolling.
Right, and you do that by talking to people who are doing something, and that's the key.
Right.
You have to do something.
Creating, making
Yes.
things, and making things in a particular understanding of reality, which is what we don't see enough. I mean, so what I was describing about the scrolling. I mean, one, we've been doing a lot of scrolling because we've been trying to sort of, redecorate so that when you guys show up on our YouTube homepage, you can find all of our playlists for all the categories of things that we've been talking about. So, theology and myth, and imagined communities, and author interviews, book discussions, film discussions. What else do we have? Political theater. That one's
Yeah.
those are quite triggering, maybe. I don't know. All the stuff that a year or two ago was triggering is like
Well,
everyone's
yeah.
going,
Well,
yeah.
because there's so much of it. The thing is, if you watch these videos we made on political theater, we're not trying to be snide when we're saying that. We've just noticed a pattern that when these big events, these big long form interviews, or these big dramatic, you know, bill signings or executive order signings happen, anything like that, there's certain clues that it's scripted. And I don't mean
Right.
scripted.
Right.
I don't mean scripted in the sense that it's false and it's not really happening. I mean it's carefully controlled optics each time, and they all tend to follow a certain pattern. And you can recognize it when you see it. When you do see it, when you do recognize it, you think, okay, this is important because they put some thought into this. There's something
Always.
else going right. There's something else going on behind the scenes here that it needed to be this scripted.
Exactly. And that's why I was saying in my intro about, feeling things that everything's fake. You're saying, well, okay, so
Yeah.
everything's a performance of some sort, including this, which we're trying to entertain you with,
Yes.
and lure you into lessons, just like they do on the Love Boat and Fantasy Island. See, it's like we've grown up
Yeah,
watching television. We know what our role is.
we did. Yeah. Our previous wasted youth in front of the television shall not go to waste in
No,
our
we will
adulthood.
we will guide you. Well, the thing is, at least in the 70s, these shows were trying to guide you to virtue for the most part. At least
For the most part, yeah.
as far as I can tell, in season 1.5 in Love Boat, it all, even though, okay, Doc is sleeping with way too many people, but in the last one of the last ones I
Yeah,
watched,
Doc's a bit of a man whore, sorry. Just a little
yes,
bit.
yes, he's had 4 wives or whatever, right? And but that Gopher's sister is on, played by Melissa, not Melissa Gilbert. She was on a previous one, by the other girl who was in Little House on the Prairie, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, the blonde one. I
With the
can't remember
blonde
whose
one,
name.
and she's
Yeah.
turned 18, and she wants to have experience, and Doc refuses to go along with this, which of course Gopher misunderstands at some point. But no, 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 there's virtue there. You should have. And Doc gets to give the virtuous speech in this one, saying should wait and make it be really special and things like that. It's like, except for you. It's
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
they're always veering back towards some kind of what we would, I mean, back in the, I mean, most of the time I'm saying, yeah, wow, it's moral, right? It's trying to be family.
But I'll bet if you looked at people writing about it or talking about it at the time, some people would have said it was very immoral. It's only moral in hindsight compared to what we're seeing today, which is just ghastly, really, even
Right.
on regular television, which
Which I don't watch, so I have no idea what's on
you're
there.
not missing it. You're not missing anything. And it just makes me wonder how bad it's going to be 20 years from now. Because I can remember in high school talking to a friend of mine who went to visit her family in Italy. and they turned the television on, and she's like, it was like Skinamax. You know, they turned on, this is regular television.
Oh yeah,
Her aunt,
no,
her
that's
aunt jumped up and went, ah, you know, and turned it off because they were little. They were like 10 and 12 years old, her and her brother
right.
at the time. And it's like, it's pretty much like that now in American television. So they were a couple of decades ahead of us in vulgarity.
It's varying from soft porn to just plain old porn.
Yeah.
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 Well, none of that yet. Although what I am entertained by in Love Boat is whenever they cut to a pool scene, there's always some very shapely woman in a bikini walking across the camera.
Just happens to
It's
be.
right. Well, clearly that was a spot, right? It's like because they're usually different people. It's not the same ones every time, right? So and you just see the back of them.
So one of our writers has an aunt that was on the show. So
Apparently
that's
that comes
gonna.
only in the last season though, when they have the dancers.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah,
So
I had
if you
never
want
seen
to, if
I
you want to
didn't
find,
know there were dancers.
yeah, yeah, well, maybe there were in the last. I bet you I know why. It was because the solid gold dancers. Anyway, we're going off on a tangent again.
I,
Follow the breadcrumb trail to Telegram and find out who the auntie is. Is
right,
the
but
dancers.
scrolling. Our theme here: continuing to scroll, continuing to scroll, continue to scroll, and
Like we're doing in our heads right now.
we're doing it in our heads, right? And the feel. I mean, one the sense of it feeling bottomless, right? We could probably
Yeah.
gossipy ladies that we are. Yes, we can do that too. Um, Go on and on and on, and you just. I mean, I was thinking about this as I was starting and saying nothing seems real, and yet. And I do also feel like I'm getting to a tipping point of being, and we've been in this intense scrolling for 5 years now, thanks to the non-event that everyone knows now was a microscopically challenged reality, as it were.
That's a
That
clever way of putting it. Yeah.
whatever it was, right? It's like the feeling of we are being gaslit again on this and gaslit again on that and gaslit again on that, and I started recognizing in myself in the last few weeks. I don't know, after going to Rome and finding reality again, I suppose, in the form of all of this, liturgical theater, that I'm I and also kind of wondering, it's like our views and our own videos have fallen off, and I think my guess is it's because people are exhausted with the yet more scrolling, yet more. We were researching on YouTube to find out sort of what people are watching and what kinds of topics people are interested in, and of course, once you get tagged into one topic, you see a gazillion things, all different channels, all different
Yeah.
content creators. I always hate that word content. Journalist is just as silly as influencer, but influencer actually feels like a real thing now. Content creator still seem to me to be like a fake term. Are we content creators? I don't. That's like, what, are we
Oh,
influencers? Are we
are journalists journaling?
podcasters? What?
Are journalists journaling? They should be called reporters.
Well, still, all of these. It's funny. These labels they originally sound silly. I
Mhm.
think journalists. Yes, they would keep diaries, and they would send out to the news. They would have newsletters that were their own gossip. I mean, as in like not
Yeah.
Downton Abbey, Bridgerton, right? Where Miss Whist, whatever her name is, the character who writes the gossip mag. That's journaling, as it were. It's journalists. Attending to the day, right?
That's true.
So but we're talking about the scrollers, the people that are scrolling. So uh, Chris DeVol saying everybody dies, but no one dies. Yes, that definitely
Yeah, that is
happens
weird.
all the
That's
time
a
in the
good way. Yeah,
scrolling.
that's a good way.
Everybody's dead, nobody's dead. Everybody's dead, nobody's dead. There's all these people that are being killed in horrific ways. Scroll,
Yeah,
scroll, 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 scroll. And so making things and doing things is the only evidence of life and the only worthwhile definition of culture. Yes, well,
yeah,
we are looking, we're on the lookout, and we do pay attention. We scroll so you don't have to. I don't know about that's totally true. But looking for people who are in fact alive in this culture. But how do we find each other other than through the scroll? I mean, in real life, somewhat, but it's too much that the internet is our public sphere, fragmented and with different places to meet and things like that. But it's still this place that has no bottom. scrolling, scrolling,
Hmm.
scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. So what do we do? And I'd say fantasy and science fiction in my childhood, right? When I was watching Love Boat and Fantasy Island, and it was about that time I started reading actual like fantasy and sci-fi novels. I read
Mhm.
Tolkien around that year when I was 11 or 12. And then after that it was great, right? But I don't find we a lot of the scrolling and blandness and everything that we're caught in is yet another superhero movie, yet another
Yeah,
fantasy remake, yet another science fiction, crew, right? It's like Love Boat was great because it was at least, it was one of the early ship crews after the Enterprise. But um, see how real we are? If I drop my paper, I bend down and pick it up. Um, the nothing, it's bland. We could keep going like this for ages and ages and ages. Don't you wish we'd stop and figure out why it feels also bland and unreal? Let's go. Let's we'll have some backdrop now. Oh look, but the image just started in the middle. We're at the rainbow with the moon in it.
oh, that was a pretty
Somewhere
one.
over, I hope this is a real picture, right? I hope that they have this one and there's a closer up and a closer up, and you say, is the moon really in the rainbow? Where are we going?
Mhm.
Where are we going to find something real again? She
I
knows what
don't
I'm
know
going to
the answer
say,
to the
but I'm wanting her
question.
to say something anyway. What?
Where are we going to find something real again?
Yeah, right?
Well,
Isn't that what people, we're here on the internet, we're here in this media environment that creates AI and copies of copies of copies and illusions and this world that feels, I don't know if people find this world more real than reality anymore because people are scrolling, 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 and it's all so bland and the same. And guys, the more AI you consume, it's true, right? Then oh yes, and what do we see today? That most of the LLMs are reading Reddit all the time. So guys,
yeah, it's nuts.
this
And it's
your Chat GPT essays are written by Reddit. So consider.
and there's going to be some. Is it China's? I think I should remember this because I'm the one that forwarded it. China's missile defense system is going to be hooked up to AI or be run by it or something weird like that.
Oh, what could possibly go wrong?
I don't know. Just yeah, when you ask how do you know what's real, and you're talking about the world, most people don't see the world, even if they didn't own a computer or an iPhone. They just see the area right around where they live and work. That's their world to them. So if they think they're seeing the world, like, well, they kind of are. They're seeing images from around the world. They're told it's true. I'm not saying it's not. Don't call us conspiracy theorists. I'm just saying when your world is this little box, how can you be sure?
Well,
So the reason
one
people are scrolling is because they're looking for dopamine hits.
well, we're looking for dopamine hits. We're trying to give you a few. The pleasure of, I'm not sure what. No, so we don't do dopamine. We do serotonin, which is
I like that. That's quotable.
apparently the kind of hit you get when you've worked on something hard and figured it out.
Oh, yeah, that's
We
a
don't
nice one.
we don't do dopamine. We do serotonin here. Right. And the thing is, I think that it's like, as a fencer, back to practice and everything, because back to the season, um that you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail, when you finally get the parry post, oh, it's so sweet. That's I don't I that is like pure accomplishment, something very, very difficult that you have then uh, 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 you know done. And chasing that kind of hit, that'll keep you going for decades.
Nice.
And it keeps getting more exciting, interestingly. Whereas the dopamine, what is the dopamine hit? Is it a tension hit or a um
I think it is tension. It's strange. I think one
attention?
of the reasons, yeah, I think one of the reasons people in general are so frustrated all the time is because it is a bit like getting a drug and having to get more hits.
Yes.
When we were doing our research last week on what YouTube channels were getting the most hits, and it's always rage bait.
Mm-hmm.
every time
Mm-hmm.
because that gives you the quickest hit. It's like pure sugar, or in some cases pure heroin, right? And you got to get bigger and bigger hits, which means more and more and more, which means you're scrolling, 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 and you're just never getting off that hamster wheel,
Right.
right? You're really going to have to take yourself off of it completely. And by it, I mean like the constant scrolling. It is shocking to me that we're carrying around in our pockets a computer with the knowledge of every library that ever was on it at your fingertips. And most people won't use it because they don't know how. And they wouldn't have a reason to either.
Right.
But yeah, a computer that took this, it was the size of a building 50, 60 years ago is now this big. It's the palm of your hand. It's the world in the palm of your hand.
Oh, very much so. Yes. And this is,
Yeah.
and someone saying, that's not the moon in the rainbow. It's obviously a Rindle sailing to meet Elwing. Well, yes.
That's very poetic.
um,
I love
but it's, potentially the world in the palm of your hand, which is an interesting
right.
image right here with here with the moon and Elwing. Now I've got it as Erendel and Elwing. Although Erendel is actually the morning star. um, that you could have the whole world in your hand, and yet the feeling is, I mean, they're heavy now because the batteries are so heavy, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But they do you feel like you're in it, or do you feel there was something that I saw this week, the method no, now I've forgotten what it was, how they labeled it. It was a clear piece of plastic the same size as a phone that people can carry around and like scroll on. But it's in fact you see nothing in it. You can only see through it, and you'd actually see the world that you're in, right? It's a kind of
Oh,
fun, like the idea of it being like a substitute. What there's a thing that you use for getting off heroin, methadone. Is that it?
methadone.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
called it method phone,
Method.
kind of, so that it's you're
Clever.
scrolling there, but you're in fact just stroking a plastic
Yeah.
rectangle, and
Yeah.
finding yourself in the world or not. I mean, I wanted one. I want. I wanted, because like you could just not have anything in your hands, right? But the
Yeah.
think of if you could reframe, perfect and wonderful metaphor for what we're trying to get to, could reframe reality so that you're seeing it through this clear window instead of the black mirror.
Yes.
What would you see? What would you be able to understand? Well, we've done some research for you, right? Um, and this is the serotonin level. Maybe we should, if I get it, to find out whether that's true. Because like if we can tag ourselves as we give you serotonin hits, will that help? Will that get people watching? It's like you gotta sit here for 2 whole hours before we get to the clinger. And
It's
it will be
yeah.
all this sweeter and more beautiful and satisfying because you have to work for it.
You're not selling
We get,
this.
hey,
They have to work.
it
No,
sells
we
it
do the
for
work.
me, right? If you want to be me and get to, oh my gosh, some of those pair posts that I got last night were so sweet, right? And it's
Nice.
like, and you miss and you miss and you miss, and you just like calm, and well, actually, one of my fencing partners is older than I am, and man, if I'm off, he just hits me at will, right? Bang, 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 bang. And we were warming up. We hadn't fenced for a while. We were warming up, and he's hitting me and hitting me and hitting me. And I'm like, "Ugh." And I'm like, and then we finally was doing a bout to 5, right? And he got to 4-1. I had 1, right? And I'm like, do not let this go 5-1, right? This is just don't, right? And indeed, I got 3 more, and then he beat me 5-4. But
Oh,
it's
and it was respectable.
it was respectable at that point because at least I like got my focus in and concentrated and got the hits, right? I it I think it's the serotonin of the satisfaction of accomplishing a difficult task, right? And that's what we're up for here, right? We are here for the difficult task of contemplation. And in our scrolling, we're hopefully scrolling actively so that we're making notes and saying, golly, I've seen that. Well, maybe not like notes, like I've seen that 16 times or counting it or something, but just pattern, the looking for the pattern. This is this famous image. This is a 19th century image of the guy looking through the heavens into the
Oh
mechanism
yeah, that's
beyond. But
cool one.
good metaphor for what we're trying to do, right? It's like you're looking
Mhm.
out from the frame into the workings of things, and that our premise being, of course, that that's infinitely more satisfying than not, right? It's the contemplative life is worth pursuing, but that there's something real there still to find that we're being frustrated by in our scrolling. The scrolling. What are we going to find? What are we going to find? You need to look out into the structure of things, which one of our playlist options is, of course, Marshall McLuhan, because we're doing a lot of the media, and this is a media problem, right? The phone and the black and the mine with the it's well, they're not black when you open them, pick them up, because they turn on, right? And then they have lights.
Mm.
That you are in the media of this internet realm, which doesn't feel real because it's fundamentally not. But then neither are books, right? And I will say this: if you guys are worrying that I'm going to say stop scrolling, well, yes, probably, but picking up and reading a book is no better. How's that? Right? It's like when I'm there watching Love Boat and Fantasy Island and I'm drawing, right? Okay, I count that as virtuous and engaged or something like that. But the way I used to read, particularly in high school and college, and the first few years I was not so much in grad school, I had to read other stuff then, but my first few years teaching here, I read in order to be in the scroll, right? Because
Mhm.
I know what reading is like when you're reading for stress relief,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't you're shy, you don't want to have anybody talking to you, you want to escaping into a book. Just think about how that sounds, right? You want to be in this
Oh yeah,
other
that's
world that
most of it.
makes no demands of you, right? You don't have to make any decisions whatsoever because it's all written out for you. You're in somebody else's fantasy.
Well, more so for the pulp fiction type books that were written over the past couple of hundred years, where you don't have to work for it because they're doing all the thinking for you. I mean, some books are harder to read than others. Some stories are more rewarding to get to the end because you had to kind of slog through it. I'm thinking of things like Mark Twain and having to get through all the dialect he wrote in, the American dialect, which is really difficult to understand,
Well, it
but it
is
was still
now. I'm
well
not.
written.
Yeah. Well, so when I was scroll reading, it tended to be like detective stories. I
Mhm.
could get three of those three
Yeah,
paperbacks and read them in a weekend,
yeah.
right? And
My father was the same way. He was a voracious reader, and he read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and he would read 3 and 4 books a week for years. Just go through them like mad because it
right.
was just something to, and also, he didn't sleep a lot, so yeah, it was probably a stress relieving thing after work. Something people might play video games to do that today, right? I think things like maybe bike riding and basketball probably be a lot more healthy than than sitting in this position a lot. Just more physically healthy and maybe more healthy for your brain. But yeah, it's definitely hits the immediate reward when it's easy to read.
Well, and
Not
and,
everything
and
is.
my meaning being that you're absorbed in the media. So
Yeah.
I'm saying I've been working really hard on a variety of things, including trying to rethink our
Yes.
YouTube presence, and you know binge watching Love Boat, and people you binge watch for
It's
comfort.
research.
It's yeah, it's research.
It's research.
Research. It's comfort watching, right? So
Mhm.
this is between the doom scrolling, which makes you feel outraged and more unhappy, but it's showing you the same thing over and over and over again with the hamster wheel level, versus the binge watching of something that one I'm obviously watching Love Boat because I want it for comfort, because it's something familiar to me from my past. I mean, one I'm getting a little. I 2 seasons in, and I'm already getting weary of the formula. So, I don't know. They added some more light lounges and stuff in season 2. So there's the Pirates Cove now, as well as the Tropical Lounge, or whichever that is, Acapulco Lounge, right? And they've got the Pirates Cove,
Acapulco. Oh, that's
and I
right.
think maybe in later seasons they go on other places. But
We do.
anyway, um, that desire for this is where I'm not sure about the dopamine. Is it all outrage, or is it partly just comforting, right? You're wanting to feel yourself in this familiar world, rather than we got our twin Silk Road versus maritime powers image now. This world that just doesn't seem to make any sense because it's all, you know,
Well,
topsy turvy, upside down.
maybe that's why people keep scrolling. I mean, they're trying to make it make sense, right? They hear about something horrible, and then this person's got an opinion, that person's got another opinion, everybody's got lots of opinions, and they're trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
So they're looking for more information on it.
Well, maybe not so much they're trying to make sense of it, because making sense of it may mean they have to like see something they didn't want to see. I mean, I think what people say they're looking for is, I mean, the confirmation bias problem, right? And that's why the algorithms work. You then keep you scrolling if they keep showing you stuff that you seem to like. So you reinforce over and over and over again the reality that you want to be in, which may be being mad at people, right? I think some people take joy and pleasure out of being mad at people.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I think people would find it very stress relieving. But the weird thing is, it both creates your stress and relieves it if the more you scroll, and you go through because you're getting dopamine hits, you're getting rage bait hits.
Right. But it's all the theme here, right? It's all still within the frame that you want and that you expect. And if the world, if you see the world, our image here, the modern Silk Road versus the maritime empires, right? And if we're if we've been living in the maritime empires and the power of the United States following on from the British Empire, and that gives you the sense of the world is the right and good place when the Anglophone nations are in control, and we're finding out that, oh wait, there's other places in the world and they have things too. That's horrifying to people. It's like Russia is clearly the enemy because they want to have their own ports, right? It's
Yeah,
the I think the comfort, the scrolling is the desire to stay in. They keep you scrolling by keeping you in the frame that you seem to prefer.
I think they do push particular frames though, particular stories and particular narratives. That's a whole nother level though.
Well, okay, so that, yes, that's important, right? Okay, so Anne Summerson, we recently finished reading the whole Silmarillion on spaces, followed by Screwtape. It was staggering how much huge cryptocurrency and AI slot merchants turned up to leisure in a built world. I'm not sure what that means. You'll have to explain that. Anger is a great muse, says River Run. Yes. Well,
Mm-hmm.
anger. So I think anger is, in that
It's a great
sense,
motivator.
it's right. You feel everybody always feels righteous when they're angry. My vision is right, and I'm going to fight for it.
You can feel righteous and still be frustrated that you can't actually fight for anything.
Well, true,
I mean, literally fight, you know.
but you usually
Yeah.
you get angry as a place from which you're going to say my vision is right, and you
I
could
can,
be
I
right.
can,
You could
yeah.
actually
I
be
can at
right,
least,
but
yeah, I can at least get angry, right?
yeah, no, but
But
I'm saying anger is a defense mechanism of controlling the situation. I mean, it doesn't
yes,
always work. I mean, anger is like
yeah.
barking, right? The dogs bark at each
Right.
other or
Well,
something.
that's just it. You feel like you're doing something. You're not doing something. You feel like you're doing something. So it is comforting that way.
Right. But we're
Yeah.
all in this comforting space of wanting to. This is consider how much time you spend trying to make sure that the world stays framed the way you consider right. And that can take a lot of. I love this image of like, what would the world look like from the back? Like, half the world is ocean. All the land is on the other side. And I hope, I mean, these are sort of Reddit circulating images, right, of the view
It
from
sounds like a flat Earth
the
thing.
Pacific
It's
Ocean.
just
Yes, it does, but it's like the Pacific Ocean. I've flown over the Pacific Ocean. I've got to fly from
yes.
Dallas to Sydney once, and
It's a bit scary.
it's very scary. It's enormous,
Yeah.
right? How I was
Yeah.
like, the Atlantic Ocean felt like really, tiny and calm when I flew over it afterwards, because it's just a few hours, and mainly you go over Greenland, right?
Right. You can always, that's the thing. You can always land, but if you have to go to like Hawaii or from Hawaii to Australia,
It's
there's nowhere to
enormous,
land.
and it's half the planet, right? The
Yeah.
Earth from Pacific side is water,
So
and that's
yeah, if there's
it.
something wrong with the plane, you're screwed.
tell you. So we need to be on a cruise ship because basically that's what the world is. It's water. But we don't think of
Yeah.
it in those terms. We think of it as like you were saying about people are mainly real is what surrounded us in our neighborhoods. But that's a
Mhm.
different kind of claim than the one I'm making. But that our vision of the world is on the one hand, the United States and Britannia ruled the seas, but on the other, we don't really think of the seas as most of it. The ruling the seas means port to port.
Means you roll the ports.
Yeah, you rule the
You
ports.
dominate
You're
them.
you're dominating the ports and the sea lanes, but the sea itself, nobody's in charge of that. It's
Right? As the sea often reminds you when
oh
you
yeah,
think you are, right?
it's absolutely enormous. So we spend I would say we've spent the last 48 minutes um, talking about the way in which you are going to desperately, desperately struggle against, oh, yes, seeing the world this way, which is Dante's. Seeing the
Mhm.
world according to the way in which everybody in the world thought of it up to the 17th century, which is a little bit what we were trying to talk about last week with Hans when we were saying and he's like he understands that the change in the science significantly happens in the 17th century. Galileo and the telescope, Hooke and the
Mhm.
microscope, which we've since learned is way more important. But that that feeling of it's interesting most of the time, and this works for reading Tolkien and Lewis. Spoiler alert. Most of the time, when people say they want the world re-enchanted, what do we think they mean? Well, I can tell you what I think they mean, but it's like if you want it re-enchanted, you want the old vision back.
What is the old vision?
Well, we have a book for that. It's called The Discarded Image, right? Um, and this is I so guys, I'm sort of surprised everybody hasn't already read this, but maybe it's harder than I realize. I read it in college um, as a textbook. It's a little textbook. It's a nice little read for a course on medieval natural philosophy, which was in fact we're studying the way in which they viewed nature and um, structures of creation. I can't even. So this is we're also thinking about like if you found this video under the title that we're going to put out under it's like very bland, right? The discarded image of the world. Well, yeah, but it's the discarded image of the cosmos. It's the discarded image of creation. It's the discarded, it's like discarded
Mhm.
image of the macrocosm. And he's like, what are you talking about, Rachel? Well, precisely, right? That we we blanded down our language for even describing what this is that we inhabit, whether it's the
Well, we broke it down into its minute parts that we could observe, right?
or I mean, the
Microscope.
metaphors here. We've been staring at it through a little square for several hundred years, convinced that we see the whole of it because we looked at it through this little tiny lens. And we and of course that little tiny lens that we're talking about, we're looking through is if you think of science now, right? What do you what says scientist in your head class?
uh, a microscope.
Oh, a microscope.
Yeah.
She's a very good class. She does her homework. But you think about it, it's like white coats, glasses, microscope, right? If you want to
Yes.
even Spike Bucklow, our favorite alchemist, painter alchemist, has a picture in one of his books of him looking through a microscope, right? Because that's how you know a scientist is at work because you're looking through a microscope.
Right. That proves you're studying something physical.
Yes, yes, and I mean, you could be looking through a telescope, but one way or another, you're looking through a lens which and that's why I wish I had one of these method phones, right? The that would be a great prop for this premise, right? You're looking through a lens, and thanks to Galileo, aka microscope guy, and Hooke, right? What's his first name? Robert. I've blanked. I've forgotten.
I think so. I think
Hooke,
it is. Yeah.
micrographia, right? Thanks to
Mhm.
Galileo and Hooke, microscope, we have convinced ourselves that the only things that we see that are really real, the really real, the really, really, really real, are things we see through a lens. Ooh, look, I have some. Right?
Same here.
Yeah, yeah.
I can see
Here's
that. It's just a little fuzzy.
here's my reality is through my lenses. So, you know,
And through the camera lens we're looking in right now.
yep. And you are
Lenses
watching us on your
everywhere.
lenses, and we're all, it's like talking about what's real. Why is it so bland? Why is it so smoothed over? Well, since the 17th century, we haven't been looking at anything except assisted with instruments that, as Hook talks about in Micrographia, can extend the senses, because you can't really trust your senses. Or, like, if you just looked up at the night sky and spent, I don't know, millennia observing the stars and could therefore see the planets doing their, ecliptic, was it epicycle dances, right? Because they come and they
Mm-hmm.
go and they move and they dance. And no, no, we're going to look through a telescope and see the truth of the mutability of the, the, the celestial beings, the celestial objects, right? Celestial objects are just as, corruptible and changeable, and oh, I don't know, you can put somebody to live on Mars or something like that, because they are part of the same, sort of materiality that we inhabit. But you only know that that materiality is there because you can look at them through a microscope. If you just look up at the stars at night, right, they're still like sparkly diamonds, or in.
Well, right. It's reminds me of the saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. So they stopped looking at the forest and started looking at individual trees. And they stopped looking at trees and started looking at individual cells in the trees.
Right. Well,
And they just lost sight of the whole.
what you said is, the fundamental practice of modern science is dissection,
Hmm.
cutting everything into parts, cutting,
Yes.
cut, and say, see this isolated part, and this isolated part, and this isolated part, and this isolated part. And that's the way we do science. That's the way we do medicine. That's the way we think about everything in these disconnected, cut up systems.
Hmm.
John Abrisi says, re-enchantment, perhaps the restoration of the imagination to its proper role, is a legitimate and necessary cognitive process rather than the world of flights of fancy. Um, yes, that's part of it. Nice phone case. Thank you, Daydreamer. Um, 12 South book, right? It's like the premise of the books for Mac. Do I get product placement at this point? Being that they're disguised. Our electronic tech is disguised as if they're
I've never
books.
seen one of those before. I didn't until he made that comment. I didn't realize that's what you were holding up.
It's my phone,
No,
right?
I
But
didn't know that.
I have cases for my iPads and my
Hmm.
laptop and stuff like that that are like big leather bound books. It's like ha ha ha, but it's,
Cute.
so you're, it works. It's funny because, like, one of the things I have in my iPad a lot of is PDFs, right? So they are
Hmm.
kind of books, right? Because they're
They
PDFs of
are.
old printed books disguised in a leather bound case that's, a printed book. Um,
I want my books on dead animals or dead trees.
I've got dead
I'm
rocks, right?
wrong.
Which you're gonna have. So it's gonna be
They were
right.
alive
It's
though,
it's
so yeah,
I
that's
mine.
okay.
Okay, this I've got some cards in it too, like prayer cards and stuff. So I count those are paper. So this is a perfect creature, right? Because it's got leather and wood with the cards, the paper, right, and the rocks. Alchemically thinking. There we go, right? Um, so John Abrisi, the, something about the imagination, right? But we actually are talking about what's real here, rather than simply what our minds do with what we encounter in reality. And the problem being here that since the 17th century, we're just going to nail this to the wall, that you guys really start thinking about it, because we've been thinking about it a lot to write Act 4. Since the 17th, in Draco Alchemicus, the poem that we're writing about all of this stuff, which is trying to get you into this imaginary world that we're trying to show you, which is actually the most real thing there is. Um, since the 17th century, we've been dealing with ways of seeing that deny what we see. And the fundamental denial has been our senses are untrustworthy. So everything you encounter, for example, why were you all persuaded 5 years ago that we were about to all die?
Why were we pursuing? Do you want an answer to that?
Oh,
Because
you can play along.
everybody's looking for the next plague, for the next Black Death.
Right, but can we
That's
see
what,
it?
no, but we were told about it.
And who were we told about it by?
Historians.
No, 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 no.
I'm talking about the
You're
Black
not doing the
Death.
catechism right here. Come on. You know the answers.
I guess I don't. I'm sorry.
I just told you the guys in the white coats. The
The
science.
scientist. Oh, right, 5 years ago, the scientists. But I
Five
guess
years ago. No, no,
I was
no,
saying five
no.
years ago.
The
The reason,
historians in the plague. That's a projection of other stuff, right?
no, the reason the scientists 5 years ago were able to successfully do this is because people have been historically made to be in terror of the plague coming back and wiping out, a quarter of the population the way it did in the Middle Ages.
During the time when the map that we're looking at now was made, which
Yeah.
is wonderful, like world map. This is oh golly, Maro's world map. I don't have captions for all of these tonight. We're just like illustrating you into the world that we're going to be showing you over the. This is the world we inhabit now. This is the one that we want you to inhabit, not just in your imagination, but with the feeling that it's actually real, which is what Tolkien and Lewis actually did in order to write their fantasy, right? This is, we always talk about how Tolkien and Lewis were world building as if they were making it
Mm-hmm.
up, right? It's like, oh yes, I'm into world building. I do not, don't try to impress me. Sorry, with
I don't
that
understand
claim.
why you don't.
I
Why
am
don't
not
you look at
impressed by
movies?
world building because
Why?
because well, God did it. I'm impressed by that, right? But the exercise in like sci-fi fantasy literature, typically, if I'm going to world build, is they're starting from the wrong place because they assume that that's what Tolkien and Lewis were doing, that they were making it all up. They weren't. They and what Tolkien says in on fairy stories is that fairy should have to be convincing, it should have this inner consistency of reality. And so you think, oh, what I need to do in my fantasy is be consistent in my reality. But neither Tolkien nor Lewis in their storytelling was making anything up.
Elves don't exist.
What?
You said they weren't making things up.
They weren't making anything up. They really
Okay.
weren't. You don't believe me, do you? No, they weren't making anything up for their stories, right? What they were drawing on was the old vision. They don't and things like elves and dragons and
Mm-hmm.
planetary influences. Tolkien, Lewis was big into planetary influences. All of those things. Here we have the Hereford world map, right? You could find them on this map. You could find them on the map of the world. And what's interesting about the Hereford world map is all land, right? Because it's the ocean is surrounding it in a ring, and the map itself
Right.
is like it's all land. But we showed you that picture from the side of the Pacific, right? It is.
Mm.
The other side's all water. There's no map.
That side is all water.
This side is the side with the land on it. Because as we know from Dante, they do think of it, the Middle Ages, they think of it as round, right? It's a globe.
Mm-hmm.
But the land's all on one side, which is completely accurate, as we just saw, because the water is all on the Pacific side. Well, there's a little bit of land on the Atlantic side. No, that Tolkien and Lewis were what they were working with, and this is so great when everybody wants Tolkien to have been working with the sort of the ancient mythology that he rediscovers through his philological studies in Old English, right? And it's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
all the Old English literature we have is Christian.
Oh, right.
And the thing Tolkien loved talking about most was, creation. And he meant it. Like creation, as in the way in which, for example, Cadman in his hymn to creation describes creation. And Lewis is doing the same thing once he's persuaded of the reality of myth by Tolkien and Mythopoeia. See my lectures in the Forge of Tolkien. Um, you know, Link in the description. Actually, for real, there's a link in the description for the Forge
Yeah,
of
they're
Tolkien.
very good. I highly recommend
All of
them.
the Forge of Tolkien. That they're both thinking in terms of Middle Earth, which is, as Tolkien said all the time, our habitation. It's real.
Right. I think people understood that from the stories that yeah, Middle Earth was meant to be humans, but humans were like creatures in the stories along with the hobbits and the elves and
Right,
so
but
when you
those are all
say
real too. Maybe I mean, the only thing that is possibly invented is the hobbits, but everything else comes from the older model. It comes from the older vision of the
okay,
world.
right, but somebody made it up unless you're suggesting that elves at one point did exist or are the elves just supposed to be angels?
Well, they do exist. They're here now. I can't believe I'm encountering this. You're not in the right frame yet, are you?
I'm a denier. I'm an elf denier.
You're an elf oh my goodness. An elf denier. Listen to her. We're going to have so much fun reading this book. Okay. John Abruzzi is asking the real presence in the Eucharist. Is it real? How is that reality encountered without the proper integration of the imagination with the cognitive process, including sensory intake? Hold that thought. We'll get to that later, not tonight.
Okay.
But okay, so this is a fun map showing the orientation of our current geography onto the way the Hereford map is shown, and it's not as far. The Hereford map. I can go back to that for a second. The Hereford map is not as far off as you might think. So here, Hereford map, Asia at the top, Europe on one side, Africa on the other. And if you look at the way, in fact, if you orient the world and draw it that way with the T and the O, it's kind of accurate, right?
Mm.
This the map, the medieval maps of the land, all on this side, are real in the sense that there is of the size of the globe that we're on and where the land is. The land is all clustered together. They don't know about the Americas, but even so, the Americas mainly fit still on one side because we saw that with the Pacific, right? Um, and I forgot what I was thinking about because I was distracted by our pictures. Uh,
Well,
what
they drew what they saw, what they seen. Well, they're cartographers and they're the people like who had traveled and seen it.
Yes, well, they're making. I mean, this whole region is completely explored, right? Maybe not sub-Saharan Africa, and
I mean,
in
even
fact, they don't know how far South Africa goes. The Mediterranean
right,
peoples and the Asian peoples don't know how far South Africa goes, but the Mediterranean is definitely in contact with the Indian Ocean through Egypt, right?
yes,
And the Indian Ocean people are therefore in contact with China, and it's like all of Eurasia is completely in contact with each other throughout
and the
antiquity.
Venetians were in direct contact with Far Eastern China.
Right,
I mean, at least briefly.
right. So this sense of the world that they live in, as having the particular shape that it does is pretty accurate, which is a nice sort of stepping stone to your to
My
correction,
elf
your
denial.
correction on your elf world. Um, I had notes. I had a plan. I had a plan, and I can't
Sorry,
even keep to it.
I
Okay,
derailed them.
so
My
no,
my
it's like here we go. So why does it? Why? So I started with the scrolling. Why everything seems so unreal, and my general premise is, we have this sense that the world that we live in is no longer attached to reality, and I'd say yes, cognitively, imaginatively, contemplatively attached to reality, and we tend to blame that disattachment on the media devices that we have, which is probably accurate at some level, right? It's like we were saying, if you're looking at your phone all the time, you're looking at your screen all the time, you're reading books all the time. That one may become a little more complicated in a second. That you're looking through lenses at pieces of the whole, and
yeah.
you're never, in fact, imagining yourself in the fullness. Now, the geographers and the astronomers are going to tell me, yes, I do all the time, but we don't, right? We specialize in segments of things.
Mhm.
We take little pieces of things. Um, and one of the ways that we often hope by way of our imagination to find something more real, which is what Tolkien said that we anticipate in fairy, something more real is now the thing that seems least real to us, and it's like enchanted or imagined or world building. And yet I will demonstrate this, I hope convincingly tonight, although we'll keep going and you'll get your serotonin hit in 6 months like I do. um, hey, I fenced for 7 years before I got on the metal podium. Are you I thank you very much. It takes time to get these serotonin hits. You're going to value this, and it'll be significant to you in your life down the road, youngins.
Oh,
All you youngins listening tonight, this is valuable information. Keep with us. And Elf denier, her too.
elf denier. Yes, I'm the resident elf denier.
Sorry, you were going to say something other
No,
than your disbelief in elves?
yes. Other than my disbelief in elves. Yes.
I lost track again. The scrolling in this episode is terrible. Um, that the reason that Tolkien and Lewis were able to achieve the sense of reality that they did in their stories is because they were actually describing reality according to the discarded image. And that the discarded image is Tolkien is Lewis's phrase for what he then goes on to describe in his book of the model of the universe that people had in their minds through the 17th century, and that this the big problem, and Lewis was actually quite sort of actively conscious of this because guess what, he liked telescopes. And he actually
Yeah.
had a telescope, and he apparently liked like stargazing and studies of planets and such like that. But that does explain why his Narnia chronicles are all planetary in their
Mm.
significance, but they're planetary in this older model significance, not just in okay, so the silent planet is the silent planet for reasons of this model that we're going to describe. But that this model is lost in the 17th century, and it's so hard for us, Elf denier, to see it as real because our science has told us it can't be real, and yet our science is the thing that's showing us that we can only see things through these lenses. So it's
Right. And our science of late has been very theoretical on top of that, including
yes.
climate science, right?
Well, yes, I mean, of the things you think about, of the things I said aren't real, like the AI smoothing everything and like taking us into. So I think the AI feels least real because it's so smoothed into the media environment. It's entirely a human invention, right? The AI is. I mean, people are worrying about whether it's demonic or something. It probably is, but whatever. It seems least real because it's in fact most artificial, which means it's most man-made, right?
Oh,
The
interesting.
AI is utterly man-made, nothing natural in it at all,
Right, but
right?
but even the name artificial intelligence implies that it's now self-sustaining and creating on its own. It's not.
Well, they want it to. They want
Yeah.
it to have that capacity because they want it to mimic reality, right? But the problem is it's completely artificial. All these other things, the climate alarmism, because like, oh, we've changed the climate, which is a premise of our ability to affect the world, rather than just our ability
Yeah,
to
it's a
affect
bold
each
claim.
other, right? Or wars, which is
We can't do anything that one volcanic eruption in 1888 didn't do worse. Just we haven't
right,
matched that destructive power,
right, right.
not on purpose or accident.
That we spend all of our times trying to alter reality while longing for it, which is an interesting thing. But the sense of what it is, well, guys, we live in one big magic spell. It's called the scientific revolution, buttressed by the Enlightenment,
Yes.
buttressed by modernity, or whatever all of that is. It's like the way we see the world is absolutely framed so concretely and so convincingly that if you put your phone down and try to look at the world, you will go crazy. And yet, we actually still live in it. Now, we'll maybe do a little more like professorial exercise here. We have some homework for you, and we do recommend that you start reading the discarded image, and we will read through a little bit of this to get you set up. Casey Elfdenier is is here to help me make sure that I explain the stuff that doesn't make sense. Because my problem is I inhabit, I've been working on. I said I got this book in college, right? It was
She
eight
believes
dollars.
in elves. There's only so much I can do.
It was eight
But
dollars and 50 cents, and I know I had this in college because it's got my terrible bad underlining. I'm a much better annotator now than I was then, uh, and as far as I'm concerned, this image of reality has been real for me for 40 years. So I find it hard to remember that people don't see it or aren't familiar with it or find it strange or default to everybody in the Middle Ages believed the world was flat. They never did. I mean, astronomers to this day, scientists in my faculty listservs will use as an example strange beliefs that we should be able to debate or not. Is oh, but remember when everybody thought the world was flat? Never, it never
Everybody
happened.
everybody repeats that phrase just because they've heard it and they immediately believe it. I don't understand why they would immediately believe it. I
Because
mean, study.
they live in the scientific revolution reality of lenses.
I think it's more than that. I think it's the mocking tone with which that phrase is used.
Oh yeah, that too.
It's reinforced over and over again, so that you're almost afraid to say anything different. I'm not, because it's hard for me to restrain myself from calling people just like really gullible idiots for believing that everybody thought the world was flat. It's easily disprovable that that's what people thought. It's easily disprovable, but
Instantly.
yeah,
Instantly. I mean, this truly read Dante and you're doomed, right? Because the entire setup of the
yeah,
story depends on Dante and Virgil going through the center of the earth, flipping
right.
in the middle and climbing up Lucifer's legs that they've climbed down his trunk, right? Nothing in medieval literature, and one of the things that Lewis points out in Discarded Images is a very literary image for if you're worrying about the imagination, right? It's a very literary image. Nothing in the imaginative literature of the period suggests that anybody thought the world was flat. Cosmos
Yeah,
Indicopleustes is another matter. We'll get to him one day probably, but it's interesting. The flat Earth claim about the Middle Ages is a myth that's enormously durable and is interestingly cognitively necessary somehow to scientists to this day. Right? They need to know that they have the right vision of reality, and everybody in the Middle Ages thought the world was flat, which they didn't.
they they need to know that they didn't discard good things.
Yes. So Mel, Riverrun has the elves will start to f with the stream. So behave.
They did
We're
before.
good friends with the fairy folk. Good, good. Make them to calm down. We'll get Casey on our side. Elf denier. Okay, so I had this book in college. It's been with me for a very long time, and we apologize 4 seasons in if we've been assuming too much of your knowledge because I read this book in college. See, I think you know it because I have it in my head. and and of course, it's like I've been studying enough of the medieval literature for decades and decades and decades to, and we're back to the moon in the rainbow, to feel it real, right? And I think the medieval image is based on actual observation. We stay, like Casey was saying, we stand on the earth, look up to the sky. It's based on incredibly detailed and millennial long observation. The Getty exhibit that I went to last year about light and astrolabes and such, we talked
Mhm.
about that with Captain Zodiac. Uh, shows how dense their calculations were, right? The people that were using the model that we're about to talk about had incredible observational abilities. Like they would sit and watch those stars, which you desperately, looking at your screen, scrolling, never even see. Maybe the moon, right? The moon was full last night, wasn't it? It's full. It's full-ish right now. They think it's. I'm not even positive, right?
I haven't looked.
See, we don't see as much as they did, and so
We don't look as much as they
we
did.
don't look as much as they did. We don't watch the properties of things in the way that they did and the interactions of qualities and materials. And frankly, Hans, if you're listening, the sense of fields and energy working together is a perfectly understandable situation in the
Yeah,
moment that they think, right? Which is things working in
right,
combinations and coincidence of opposites and qualities and all of
right.
these things.
It's the automatic assumptions that scientists make that I always bring into question. And they say, well, we just assume this. Like, well, what is your assumption based on? This is, by the way, why I did very poorly in math when I was growing up, because I'd always have to know why. They would say, memorize this equation. X equals this. I said, why? Why does it equal that?
Right.
Why are you using X? Why are you using this language? How do I know it's going to do that? No, just memorize it. And I couldn't do it. I was not meant to go into that field, but it's still a good question. Why would any scientist in any field assume anything? Because if as soon as you just are satisfied with just the assumption of things, you never look past it, and then you're never going to progress in your field. Is what I'm thinking.
Well, and
Go ahead.
what we talked about with Hans last week was saying that people now tend to assume their model just as much as
Yes,
anybody into the people pre-17th century.
but they also assumed, like we just said, that people before the Enlightenment didn't know anything, and so they've discarded all of that.
Yes, they've discarded this knowledge, but what's interesting, what you're just okay, tangent scroll. What's interesting about that is, just memorize the equations. Mathematics is a very beautiful language of description, and in fact, it is more simply description than anything else. Right? It's like it's a translation. So it's a translation of um, instead of using words, you're using um,
Using symbols and
certain
numbers,
kinds of
but
symbols, right, in
yeah.
operations. And if you understand them as sentences, equations is a sentence. And
See, if somebody had told me it's a language, I would have went, oh, okay, and I would have gotten that because I had already studied foreign languages from a very young age.
it's a language. It's a
Yeah,
language.
it is a
And
language.
people that are really good at math are contemplative. All right, that's why they're always talking about the beauty of equations and such like that, because they're trying to find these harmonies and equations, right? Look, you're trying to look for
Yeah,
things that
it's the man.
structurally,
It's the man peeking behind the world, looking at how it's run like clockwork,
right.
right?
But
Very mathematical illustration.
so it's not the mathematics as such is not the problem. And there's lots of mathematics in the Middle Ages too. And one day when I
Hmm.
have time to actually properly prep, I can talk more about
Yeah,
all of
they were
that.
very good at. Yes, they're very good at
They're
math
very,
too.
very
It
good
was
at math,
yeah,
and they develop all sorts of mathematics, in conversation with the other people across Eurasia, China and India and Islam, right? That all of these regions, they're all in conversation about the mathematics. So it's not that. Um, but that they're thinking in this system of reality that um we I mean the bigger argument is saying we've too easily rejected, but what I think interestingly in literary terms or in imaginative terms, without it we feel unmoored from our Middle Earth. I mean, Middle Earth was simply the term in Old English for where we live, right? And it's middle,
hmm
and this is probably between heaven and hell, right? The Yggdrasil tree image of the middle and the but anyway, it's where we live, right? And by the Christian period, thanks to studies from antiquity, they also all know that it's round, right? So it's
hmm
middle in the midst of creation, in the midst of the heavens and so forth. And it's a problem for me remembering that you guys don't know all of this, right? So that was the setup there. Um, Tolkien. This is Lewis. I tend to think in Tolkien terms, but we're doing
hmm
Lewis right now. He says that the book was based on lectures that he gave at Oxford, and it was lectures that he gave to his students in literature, right? So he's mainly setting this up as a handbook for understanding the stories that he was teaching, and in that sense, Tolkien never wrote anything quite so straightforward. as, and Lewis didn't either. This was published after he died, right? So his lectures, right? But um, that he's trying to give you a way into their stories, which is, I think, sort of the plainest version of what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you guys a way into seeing the world as pre 17th century authors did.
Right. It's like it's the frame. It's the framework around is what Lewis called in those lectures the back cloth, right?
Yes.
The backdrop. Yeah.
And what he wanted you to do was get absorbed in it enough, which, to be fair, he and Tolkien were really trying to do in their writing, right? They were trying to write themselves when they said they wanted to write the kinds of stories that nobody was writing. They wanted to write themselves into this world, which, as far as everybody prior to the 17th century considered, was real. So they're
Mhm.
not world. This is why I say they're not world building in any. in the way that which people now, like, I'm going to make my planet and stick, landscape on it and name it, and there I've built a world, right?
Well, well,
That's
Tolkien did do that though. He created a map, right, in the beginning of The Hobbit. So when people say world building, it's so yeah, it doesn't. Well, it actually looks a bit like the maps you just showed.
well,
Just,
what
but
Tolkien's does, because he actually studied his
yeah,
sources.
he studied
He
what?
studied his sources, so he knew what he was doing, right? And his map, I mean, this is in. I do several lectures on this in the Forge of Tolkien, on history and geography and things like that. His map is very easy and entertaining to map
Yeah.
onto our world because he did, right? He's like giving old names to bright current places, or thinking in terms of the very long history of the continents and such, and that they've collapsed and sunk and Atlantis is gone, and things like
Hmm.
that. So he means
And
it.
kingdoms come and go and they get renamed and borders get redrawn and
Right. But Middle
yeah.
Earth, Tolkien's Middle Earth is not meant to be anywhere else. It's meant to be here. It's meant to be our Earth.
See, I did not know that.
People don't, right? Because they think he made it all up. And oh,
Although Middle Earth does kind of give you a clue that he meant it to be here.
they think most people, I think, if you default ask them, they think it's like Star Wars, right? He stuck it on a planet far, far away or something. No, it's
Yeah.
here. It's like, and it's in the midst of the heavens in the sense of it's right in the middle of everything. So,
Hmm.
um, and it's and therefore the creatures on it, the elves, and men, and all of the other, the dragons and things like that, they're meant to have been real, not fantasy, right? There's not, and therefore the not just the geography but also the physics of Middle Earth should be what we experience.
Okay.
Okay, but Lewis says, you could get most of what I'm going to say in these lectures in old books and encyclopedias and stuff. But if you were doing it while you were reading the stories and having to look everything up, it would distract you too much, right? This is the problem. The scroll is, I mean, it happens to me, of course, and I'm sure this happens to you guys. You'll be scrolling for something, find a link, click on the link, it takes you somewhere else. Before you know it, you can't get back to where
Guilty.
you
Yeah.
were because you have no
Yeah.
idea how many links you followed. And Lewis is saying, you know, there's a problem if you only start looking stuff up in the footnotes when it's hard and you don't understand it, and it drags you off. He says these are treacherous passages, but there are treacherous passages which will not send us to the notes. They look easy and aren't. That you and the more you, and also he's worried that the more you spend time looking stuff up, the more it takes you out of the story. So what he wanted to do in this book was, you got to memorize it. Here's your things that you got to memorize. You got to memorize it because otherwise you'll constantly be breaking your own frame of attention in your story. But
Now,
you want to stay absorbed in the story. You don't want to have to keep
mhm.
looking things up like Mars or
Yes. Now I understand why this was a lecture for students studying literature.
mm,
That makes sense because when I studied literature, that was the thing. I was one of the sensitive students. He talked about the more sensitive students that
right.
this would bother them and it would take them out of the story and they would never get back into it. And in fact, after I graduated college, I didn't read for just for fun for years because I could not pick up a book without trying to dissect it and go to references and try to figure out what they meant. And
Right.
it was just not very fun at all. So this was definitely directed at me as that kind of student.
He wants you
Yeah.
to. So this, we're back to the guy, piercing the heavens and looking outside and watching the gears. Right. You don't.
Yeah.
Lewis is giving these lectures because he doesn't want you to have to be doing that all the time, and lose the enjoyment of being in the world.
Right.
Yep. He says, to be always looking at the map when there is a fine prospect for you shatters the wise passiveness in which landscape ought to be enjoyed. Which is also another thing, saying, it would be better if we could just go outside and look at the trees and well, trees and grass is really what I can see when I go outside now, um, rather than either being always in your phone looking up what kind of tree is that, or not really in the landscape itself, always looking at the map instead. So this is, on the one hand, Lewis wants to give us a map, and on the other hand, he wants to make sure that we don't need to keep referring to it all the time. He wants us to be within it, which is, and he says, there's some that prefer, he says, to not do this, right? Not to find themselves absorbed in the reality of the story. Um, they're like the tourists who want to stay English wherever they go. Just their resolute Englishry carry with them their resolute Englishry with them all over the continent,
It's
mix
so
only with other
funny.
English tourists, enjoy all they see for its quaintness, and have no wish to realize what those ways of life, those churches, those vineyards mean to the natives. Um, Lewis, he has this wonderful image in an essay of his called "Meditation in a Tool Shed," where he's contrasting the difference between being in the light and looking along the beam and seeing the sun and
Mhm.
its reality versus looking at the light and seeing only the thing by which you could see but standing outside of it all the time. And so he's trying to, in this, get you inside of this world, which, as Tolkien would insist, you are in, right? This is our in fact, um, habitation. It's the reality that we inhabit as creatures of the creator. But anyway, they're both very interested in this idea of getting inside the um, vision. So how what do we need to do to in order to do that? Chapter 1. Well, okay, so Lewis starts here with, I say he's one of the things that he was interested in was this absorption in the light. The other was he was very frustrated with the social scientists, which is a feature of both his and Tolkien's teaching struggles. Although Tolkien had struggles with the literary critic professors versus the philological historical um, professors. Tolkien liked doing history of languages and cultures coming out of the etymologies of languages, which is how he says he did his work. Um, Lewis writes more in his essays on how frustrated he is with the social scientists claiming to be able to describe everything and never getting inside of it.
What would getting inside of it look like?
Well, this, right, what we're trying to do. But the outside problem is what he says. That's why he starts with the anthropologist in the outset. Medieval man may share many ignorances with the savage, and some of his beliefs may suggest savage parallels to an anthropologist. But he has not usually reached these beliefs by the same route as the savage. The point being there that we encounter these medieval beliefs because of the rupture from in the 17th century with the scientific revolution and everything. We encounter these beliefs as if we're encountering an alien culture rather than our
Mhm.
past culture, and it's therefore, as the Europeans are traveling all around in their maritime empires and encountering these peoples in other parts of the world, mainly in other parts of Eurasia, because that's where a lot of the people are. Um, the more and in Pacific and things like that as well. But that encountering them and they're unusual, and you're trying to anthropologically get yourself inside of their strange cosmology.
Mhm.
And um, and when uh, I mean, anthropology in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, in the height of the colonial period of the European colonies, is very, very interested in cataloging and collecting all of these kinds of systems. And so it's interesting that that's where Lewis starts, right? That you might think when you encounter this vision of the world that it's savage and primitive. It says savage rather than primitive. That it's savage and therefore like the kinds of things an anthropologist might suggest, but it's not. And did you understand why he said why what he meant when he said it's not?
That it's not savage,
Yeah, savage simply in this sense is the opposite of civilized. It's not.
civilized.
Yeah, he's not meaning it necessarily to mean like
But I guess
bloodthirsty.
if I
Remembering,
had
of course, that both Lewis and Tolkien had been in World War One, so they don't have any like fantasies about how peaceful modernity is.
right, how peaceful and
Yeah,
civilized Europeans are at all
right.
times. I'm guessing, if I had to take a guess, I'd say he meant that somebody's not a savage somebody's culture isn't to be judged just by contrast with one's own, that they have their own culture.
Okay, so that's a sort of start place, but it's yeah. See, I'm glad when I ask you because then I realize better what I. So savage beliefs are thought to be the spontaneous response of a human group to its environment, a response made principally by the imagination, which is why simply worrying about the imagination is not quite as far as we have to go in. They exemplify what some writers call pre-logical thinking, whether we can go there or not after Jared Diamond, but we don't worry about that. They are closely bound up with the communal life of the group. Um, what we should describe as political, military, and agricultural operations are not easily distinguished from rituals. Ritual and belief beget and support one another. The most characteristically medieval thought does not arise in this way. So the first thing he's saying is it's not medieval thought has no relation whatsoever to, in fact, these I'd say maybe organic belief systems, which arise out of the situation that the people are in themselves. Right? It's saying a human group responding to its environment, bound up with the life of the actual group. So the savages, um, I mean, I guess indigenous. It's simply itself, and in Lewis's thinking, probably places like I don't know, Papua New Guinea cultures
He's
are
thinking,
famous for
he's
these.
thinking, yeah, he's thinking of Africa because he mentioned Hottentots, um,
Right.
late in chapter 2. But so and that was probably how they were described at his during his time as savage.
Yeah,
Because
if we get stuck on savage, we're doomed, right? Because
yeah,
it means what he's saying is it's simply organic to the group, right? Their beliefs
yeah,
and rituals arise out of their own
right.
practices, their own experiences, their
So
own environment.
how would he have a problem with an anthropologist then? Because I don't think they would disagree with that.
Well, no, the anthropologist as such wouldn't disagree with that, but the problem is whether you can see the world from their perspective.
Whether it's possible to, or
Right,
is he instructing that that okay,
right.
probably not.
Well,
Yeah.
this is, I mean, this is a big
Mhm.
deal for anthropology because it's the huge question of empathy, and
Hmm.
insofar as we've all been um, browbeaten over being, well, I was just watching Cole Hastings. I've been watching a lot of his videos. He does very nice videos, um, talking about woke and what woke is. And he had this very nice
Mhm.
meditation on, well, it's simply, being able to see things from another person's perspective and, appreciate the differences of perspective and things like that. This anthropological anxiety about being able to see through the perspective of a completely different culture is the base uh, sort of condition for that, because the anthropologist, well, and the base condition for the anthropologist's anxiety is Augustine's concern for mission and catechizing,
Mhm.
right? So blame Augustine. Whether you can get inside the other person's perspective well enough to figure out what you need to say to them to persuade them to see Christ.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very specific mission, though.
Well, but that is the anthropologists, being European. I mean, they were in mission. They were off. The anthropologists can be often now at odds with the missionaries and feel that
Yeah.
the missionaries are the bad guys because the missionaries were sometimes supported by empire and, well, often, right. That's
Well,
why the
but
Europeans are able to be in these other places.
what I've heard of the objections over the past 20 years was that their culture is perfect just as it is, and you
Mm.
don't need to change them. And introducing Christianity just ruined them,
That
right?
right. That's the thought. That's the thought to have in the background of how different are these cultures. Can you see yourself through them? And that's the I don't think Lewis is he's not upset with an anthropologist at that point, but he is trying to get you as reader to be able to see yourself through, for example, as we see right now, Dante's vision of reality. So it's an interesting problem because he's going to suggest to you that imaginatively you can see the world like Dante did. But could you? Could you ever forget what you saw through the lenses?
Okay. Could you ever believe in something you haven't seen with your own eyes? Is that
No,
the question?
no, because in fact, what the premise will be, in fact, that the medieval, well, no, he's going to say that they learned all from books, right? But so could you hold in your imagination, not just that the Earth is flat, which they didn't think, and which people try to now think that, like how would the world change if you could think of it as flat? Even harder, how would the world change if you could think of it in the model that Lewis is going to try to show you the medieval authors were using, which includes, fundamentally at the baseline, the Earth at the center, the celestial spheres going out in their nestedness, and a difference between what's on the Earth, which is changeable, and that changeable layer goes up to the moon layer because of you can see the atmosphere change is changeable,
Yeah.
right? So it goes up to the moon layer, and then everything outside of the moon layer is perfect and unchanging, and this great system that they see, the wheeling stars and the planets and such, would move very regularly in ways that by studying them for centuries you can chart. I mean, that's just basic of what this world system looks like. um, but could you see yourself through that understanding? Could you see the world, hold that, if you're, say, reading Dante, and really see the Earth at the center, and therefore really see Satan at the center of the Earth, and really see purgatory and the heavens in the way that Dante describes them? And Dante meant it to be the scientific view, the
Oh, he did.
philosophical. Yeah, this was not meant
They
to be.
they thought hell was literally in the center of the earth.
Well, Dante put it there, but he thinks that what he's doing, he has some like demonstrations when he gets to paradise of why the moon seems to have dark patches, and he
Hmm.
does a sort of little experiment with lenses to help you see how the moon would have dark
I
patches.
haven't got to Paradiso yet. Okay. That's going to make me want to speed up and read. Get to it.
Right,
That's
but as far
interesting.
as Dante concerned, he was giving you the best, science of the day, the knowledge,
Yeah,
scientia, the
sure. He probably
knowledge
was.
of
Was
reality,
performance.
and that he's giving you a spiritual understanding of it is as much a part of its reality as the material, because as I'm showing, we're seeing now in this image of Christ as creator, uh, that cover that we see right now is the cover of these moralized Bibles, although I think maybe not. Is that the same one as that? Yes, it's the same as my picture.
Oh,
um, which you can't see because I cut my picture off. So here's Christ as creator, and this reality is the one that Dante is trying to imagine you're in, but it has a physical reality that has properties that they would consider philosophical and true for reasons that we'll get to. We're about to get to. Okay. Um, but go back to this. The savage beliefs are not these, right? This is not savage. This image of Christ as creator is not savage
hmm.
whatsoever, right? Um, Neither is it um, the parallel example that Lewis gives is like in Egypt. Sometimes when a community is comparatively homogeneous and comparatively undisturbed over a long period, such a system of belief as the one that arises out of the environment of the group itself, such a system of belief can continue with development long after material culture has progressed far beyond the level of savagery. So you have more tech. Right? It may then begin to turn into something more ethical, more philosophical, even more scientific. But there will be uninterrupted continuity between this and its savage beginnings. Something like this, it would seem, happened in Egypt. And I'm not sure where else he thinks it happened, right? Maybe China. Sort of a system of understanding things that arose, again, organically out of the group's environment and then is more elaborated.
Not sure I'm following. It gets more confusing.
Okay, so you understand what he means by the savage. It's just a group of people
Yeah,
in a
it's the,
particular
well, not
environment with
not right. He
their
means not.
own group.
Yeah, like the pagans, right? The pagan Egyptians, or maybe the pagan Greeks.
Not necessarily, because so the contrary example he's saying is the Middle Ages. The peculiarity of the Middle Ages may be seen in these two examples. One of which, okay, so see, we're not even going to get past page two.
I actually did understand it. It's written in very plain English.
It,
But
but you can be skimming over it and think you understood it, right? And then you realize,
oh, I didn't understand all of it. I understood most of it. I understood he was talking about continuity that broke after the Enlightenment. Although I didn't think he put him in those words, but it's because he follows the train of thought from the Middle Ages back to Aristotle, back to pre-Aristotle, and he's imagining what the people believed something that they passed that on, and eventually it got written down, and then written down, and then written down up through the Middle Ages. That it wasn't created of whole cloth. These ideas of what the world was.
okay, so the one error you made in there is eventually it got written down
Why is that an error?
because it's as far as he's concerned, it's only in books.
It's only in books. No, the people in the Middle Ages, yeah, he said they considered it was only in books, but he
Right.
imagined that there had to be a time before Aristotle, before writing, where it had been written down, that Aristotle himself didn't make these ideas up.
Well, this okay. So this is the leap that it's like the savage. We can't see at all except for we can talk to them, right? So if the
Right,
savage is a completely the media that the savage has is totally oral, so the only way you can get it is talking to living people.
right,
Um, with the Egyptian example, they have their own writing that comes out of their own situation, and he's imagining it feels a bit romantic in the sense that it emerges out and it's sort of pure and it's of itself because that's not true. It's like remember I would say right now we're looking at the design for a rose window, which is
oh,
topical
that's
to
so
it. But
cool. I love
we'll move
that.
forward to the Mappa Mundi and the this this entire oikumene, right? The ancient world is way interconnected, all of it, constantly
Yes,
telling each other stories. So even the Egyptian, I mean, I don't think you can even say the Egyptian is of itself. It's more. I mean, the Egyptian has more like heft, like I think it's giant pyramids and centuries
right.
of
They had some mad skills.
they had some mad skills for a long time,
Yeah,
but you know their mad skills include being in contact with the Assyrians and the Babylonians,
yes,
and
and the
so
Greeks.
the Greeks are the newcomers.
Well, no, but they were
in
in contact with them before that though, because they're right on the Mediterranean.
right. I mean the Minoans, and so it's like so even Lewis's example of the Egyptians developing up in their own region, and it being that we see that with Egypt and that the medieval. So I at this point I start just quarreling with Lewis a little bit, but his simple first statement is the one that you picked up on, is the medieval understanding of all of these things that we're going to be learning about in the rest of the book. They get completely from books,
Yes, yeah, he made that clear.
right? And that
Yeah,
therefore, ironically, whatever you think about the Middle Ages as a learning a culture of knowledge, as far as they were concerned, what they were trying to do was get the best knowledge they could, but in their minds, it all comes out of books. Hmm. I
yes.
wonder who's like that now, right?
It all comes from the internet.
Well, and it's funny because it was all those medieval people. They believed everything they read in books. Oh yeah, you believe
Right.
everything you read on Wikipedia? Give me a break, right? Or your AI, you guys, are you going to believe your grokked
Okay.
AIs? And it's like, oh
This
well, the
is
AI
yeah.
wrote it out, and therefore I believe it. You are more credulous than the Middle Ages. I'm just saying.
That this is at the point at which I have to yet again say, yes, I am this old. I can remember when people used to make the joke, oh, I read it was published in a book. It has to be true, right? Because of course it was a joke. No, it doesn't have to be true. Lots of garbage gets printed, but it was official. But that didn't happen in the ancient world too much. I mean, they did write some fiction, but because it was expensive. It's like really
No,
expensive.
there's more stories than you think. Although uh, Lewis also ends up saying he's not really talking about the romances and the ballads, and we think of the Middle Ages as all about imagination and quests and stuff. And he's saying, no, au
Yeah.
contraire. They're actually all about knowledge, right? What they love in the Middle Ages is knowledge, which is how you end
I
up go back to the Mappa Mundi, right? It's like
Yeah.
this map is enormous, right? The mappa mundi is like
Mm.
feet, but it's huge. And if you and I we have there's a replica drawing of it to size in our library collection, so you can go see
Oh,
lay
that's
it all
fun.
out, right, and read all the inscriptions and stuff. This map is the kind of map they love in the Middle Ages, which is lots and lots of details,
Lots of detail.
right?
Yeah.
Details and knowledge, and you want more knowledge, and they love knowledge. And that's why it's like, and their books, the more of the books that they have in the Middle Ages are these catalogs of things.
Yes, and he made the funniest comment, and I thought that was kind of amusing. The people of the Middle Ages were great at organizing. They loved organizing things. It was their job to tidy up, right? So they would take all this other information and put it, like you say, and put it in catalogs and organize all of the information. And I thought that was funny because that was chapter two. In chapter one, he was describing, right, he was describing the process of thought from the Middle Ages back down to pre-Aristotle. So he was kind of doing the same thing. He was
Oh yeah.
organizing it all in his head. That was funny.
Yes, and when he said that the thing that they would have been most impressed with of our modern technology is the card index. I'm like, yes, the card index.
Card catalog, it's
The
back.
database, right? Well, so okay, so we are into reintegrating all of our themes, right? This is our theme for tonight, which is integrating all of our themes, which is to help everybody. Here's welcome newcomers, new passengers aboard, right? So we can guide you to um, the discussion we had with Mark Stallman on the digital retrieves the medieval. It
Mm.
really does, right? We are
Yes.
in one, this problem of seeing the world through what kind of frame. Big one. That's a main theme of our cruises, but here on the Ark. But the sense that the way that we exist in this digital environment has interesting features that make sense from a medieval perspective. The the print media has overlapping features too, right? Once you get printing, you start like by the 17th century. We're being unfair to the 17th century in some ways. One of the things they're doing in the 17th century is reprinting all the medieval manuscripts, right? So
Mm.
there's huge printing projects in the 16th and 17th centuries of collecting all the manuscripts and making printed editions of them, which now we get in PDFs, which is why my iPad is full of them, of the early modern printed edition. So this
It's the
desire.
Internet Archive Project.
What?
It's the Internet Archive Project. You
Hmm.
just described what they were doing in the 17th century. That's
Yes.
really interesting.
Yes. So
And we have
this
to
is
get
like
all this before we lose it. We gotta,
suddenly you get new media and you want to fill it up with all the old media to get that all, when all, like you said, with the phone, all of the libraries in your hand. You want all
yes.
of the knowledge there. So what we're, that you, so this, that my phone case as a book is totally appropriate, right? Because we want all of the books in my book. And therefore you're in your scrolling and living always in the scroll, you're not that far away from the Middle Ages as you thought we said you would be.
Yes.
Because you're very much in this, mediated world of stories that is coming to you through your frame, right? For
Hmm.
example, and this is we're almost out of time. Good, because then we have more content for next week. As content creators, it's like it's a trauma and a trial, and we're going to spend August talking about this discarded image. Um, okay, so this is his example of one. It's like, what kind of stories are they telling in the Middle Ages that are truly medieval stories? Sometime between 1160 and 1207, an English priest called Layamon wrote a poem called The Brute, after Brutus, as in descendant of Aeneas, who lands in Britain. No, wait, I'm getting ahead. We actually have a manuscript of the Brute in our library in Chicago. In it, Layamon tells us that the air is inhabited by a great many beings, some good and some bad, who will live there till the world ends. The content of this belief is not unlike things we might find in savagery. To people nature, and especially the less accessible parts of her with spirits, both friendly and hostile, is characteristic of the savage response. But Layamon is not writing thus because he shares in any communal and spontaneous response made by the social group he lives in. Okay, this is a big problem if you believe whether or not medieval people believe in fairies, right? As far as Layamon has these spirits in the air, according to Lewis. The real history of the passage is quite different. He takes his account of the aerial demons from the Norman poet Wace, circa 1155. Wace takes it from Geoffrey Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae before 1139. Geoffrey, and there's layers of like, Geoffrey Monmouth is the one that gives King Arthur stories, right? Geoffrey takes it from the 2nd century De Deo Socrates of Apuleius. Apuleius is reproducing the pneumatology of Plato. Plato was modifying, in the interest of ethics and monotheism, the mythology he had received from his ancestors. If you go back through many generations of these ancestors, then at last you may find, or at least conjecture, an age when that mythology was coming into existence in what we suppose to be the savage passion. There's your eventually that I stand corrected. He does say that, but there's this feeling of it. None of this has anything to do with what we actually have in the books, and I think the leap from written to oral or oral to written is anyway. You were right.
And the idea that a book you're
You were
reading
right. She was right. There's no elves. She's wrong. No, wait.
The idea that what you're reading from civilization is a civilized, and you can easily discard the work of savages, is that its origin was savage, right? If you go back far enough, the origin of the stories that you're reading right now were not from a civilization that you would recognize as such.
This is a deep anthropological question because it's so what the Hereford map drawing right now is a broken down. So the green part's Europe, the yellow part's Asia, the pink part's Africa. And if you study the map, the Hereford map fully, particularly along the side of Africa, and there's lots of monstrous races. So these are aerial demons, right? The monstrous races include things like the dog-headed people and the guys with long ears and the guys with faces in their chests and the hoppers, the skiapods, and things like that. All of which Lewis puts in. I think they're in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, right? The different creatures, the hoppy things and stuff. All of those are in ancient stories, right? So if you come to them as medieval people believed in all these monsters, it's like well they got them from books, right?
Yeah, right.
And because they're in the ancient sources, which they are reading very diligently, making proto-card indexes of, they consider must be real in the sense that they're reading Plato and Pliny's natural history, right? These are natural phenomenon that they consider must be real on the planet, on the Earth. They don't consider the Earth a planet because it's stable. The planets wander. So, but the English poet knew nothing about that. It's further from him than he is from us. He believes in these demons because he has read about them in a book. Just as most of us believe in the solar system or in the anthropologist's accounts of early man, because we've read them in the book. Savage beliefs tend to be dissipated by literacy and by contact with other cultures. These are the very things which have created Layamon's belief. So the primary claim that Lewis starts with is all of these things are going to sound fantastic to you, and you're going to assume that they made them up or came to them out of their, indigenous folk wisdom. But this cannot be true because we see them copying the same things over and over and again in these lines of transmission, and more often than not, they come from antiquity, and mostly. Right. And then the elves thing is going to be interesting because there's a whole chapter we will get to called the Longivy, which is Lewis's attempt to give Tolkien's obsession with elves some concrete background. That they are the alternative world would have been to call them fairies, right? But he calls them Longivy because they're the long-lived ones, and that being the primary feature that Tolkien gives his elves, right? That they are of the earth and live with the earth during its existence. So they're immortal, but they're not immortal. Because they can't die, but they live long time. So Lewis will explain where the elves come from and that they are actually part of this vision. So they got it from a book. They got it from a book. And this is, what he talks about, it's a manuscript culture. And insofar as it's a manuscript culture, every writer, if he possibly can, bases himself on an earlier writer following an auctor, an authority, right? So it's a clerical culture, and it's very, very, very concerned with establishing authorities, because it's like they also are proto footnotes, right? We want to know who said what prior to me.
Why did they want to know that? Why were they so concerned with that? Because that sounds like a big part of their literary
It
culture.
is, yeah, that's good. Why are they concerned with it? Something I've not had considered to put into words. Um, well, they are they're very under concerned with truth, and of course the people that you're thinking about in Northern Europe, they've received this knowledge mediated through missionaries, right?
Hmm.
Augustine going to
Yes.
Canterbury with the books. They get all these books from Rome. Rome is the this this great repository of ancient Mediterranean knowledge, and the Mediterranean knowledge was, of course, through the Greeks connected with the Persian, the Hellenistic knowledge, Egypt, India. I mean, they're knowledge hungry, right? The Middle Ages are, they love knowledge. That's,
Hmm.
I mean, say science, right? For them is scientia, it's knowledge, and so they are great catalogers. This is what Lewis is pointing to, right? They love system. They love everything being in a coherent structure, and they see it in its fullness, right? They want the fullness of knowledge. So, in fact, they might actually enjoy, medieval person dropped in now, right? But they find the scrolling horrifying, or it's so it's interesting.
Oh,
With
I think they find it horrifying because,
scrolling image is the opposite of the codex, right? The codex is
yeah,
the book form that we have, and the scroll is this. But
because you get lost, and like you've already pointed this out, it's easy
right.
when you're scrolling to get lost because you keep, following these other little rabbit trails that are sprinkled throughout all the stories, and then you pretty soon you are. It's like being lost in the woods. It's like, oh, I was following this trail, but then I saw this firefly and I went over there, and then I saw
Mm-hmm.
this butterfly and I went over there, and before you know it, you're lost in the deep dark woods. Can't find your way out.
So this is, I mean, this is, funnily enough, we think of like fairy stories as being going into the dark forest and getting eaten by wolves. Um,
Mhm.
the forests tend to be in Germany, and
Yes,
and those are pretty dense and dark.
they're
But
they're very dark.
I haven't seen them. I haven't seen those forests. But
No, I meant the stories, but yeah, the forests are pretty dark too. But no,
right,
the
like
fairy stories in
Mirkwood,
Germany are very dark.
Mirkwood level stories, that the Mirkwood is in landscape terms around Germany, in
Mm.
the legendarium. That So here's this image from the Psalter. This is famous Psalter map. Most that what you find in medieval imagination is it's all full of light, because of course it's full of God,
Oh,
and
yeah.
illuminated, and the desire to show Asia as much as Europe, right? These maps all include the whole known world, right? And that includes everything they've read in a book, and they're going to figure out a place to put it. So because it's in a book, it must be real. It must be out there somewhere. And I'm going to and I mean, all of these world maps include all the monstrous races, but they're marvels, right? It's like, wow, this stuff exists in the world, and they're not aliens, and we put aliens in ours. It's like, it's going to be aliens, it's always going to be aliens, because we're frightened of the unknown coming, and I don't know, if they're giant bugs, they'll eat us or something, and they'll hypnotize us or something. Like the medieval stories, the Longivy will have to deal with, right? What the elves are, but their sense of these monstrous races tends to be more, they're part of the creation. They're part of the cosmos. They have a place in it, and we just need to figure out where it is, right? Where are they? We might not have seen them, but they must be out there, and we'll still put them on the map somewhere.
Mm.
But why? Because, I mean, I think fundamentally because they take the idea of creation very seriously, and they want to study all of it. So, in fact, all of that, like, we're making fun of the 17th century. One of the things that happens in the 17th century is, of course, the Europeans are busy traveling all over the place from port to port on the seas, collecting plants and animals and naming them all,
Medieval.
right?
Yeah.
And putting them in catalogs, and making a big system of the creatures. This is a continuity, I think, of the delight of, like, all of these creatures must somehow fit together
Yeah.
in our descriptions, in our structure, and they all fit together because they're all made by God, right? It's this absolute. Never mind the Middle Ages is dark and gritty and depressing. No, there's this like, here we're back to the moon and the rainbow. It's perfect, medieval celebration, right? Here we are in this wonder of God's creation. If you want to know what happened to the enchantment, theological, right? If we've lost the enchantment that we feel reading Lewis and Tolkien, maybe we need to remember who they were and why they were writing with the enchantment that they were trying to reintroduce people to, which was, of course, creation. John Abrisi says, interesting, I see they're now going to make Newman a doctor of the church. Well, fine time, right? Because
They are.
Newman
Yeah.
is behind the oratory, which was patron Saint Philip Neri, which is where Tolkien grew up in Birmingham, the Birmingham Oratory. And a good deal of Philip Neri's meditations is on this kind of joy, which is delightful because one of our upcoming guests has associations with Saint Philip Neri. And this kind of desire to see the world not just as a system and as ordered, but as created in this beauty, in this order, and filled in by all of this knowledge that human beings have been collecting for centuries. So it's not folklore, even though it's wonderful and marvelous. So he says, there was nothing which medieval people liked better or did better than sorting out and tidying up. Of all our modern inventions, I suspect that they would have most admired the card index. And saying, it's like we have the Summa of Aquinas, Dante's Divine Comedy, but there's a third work which we can see, I think, set beside these two. This is the medieval synthesis itself, the whole organization of their theology, science, and history into a single, complex, harmonious mental model of the universe. The building of this model is conditioned by two factors I've already mentioned: the essentially bookish character of their culture and their intense love of system. They're bookish. They find it hard to believe that anything an old author said is simply untrue. They inherit this incredible collection of books. So it goes from Judaic, pagan, Platonic, Aristotelian, Stoical, primitive Christian, patristic, or you could say chronicles, epics, epic poems, sermons, visions, philosophical treatises, satires, and as far as they're concerned, all of it has to fit together into a single harmonious whole. It's not like,
Well, yeah, that's their assumption was that it fit together, and what they were doing was trying to put the pieces together to prove it, I think,
right.
with collecting everything,
And it's
which
all
is,
going to have harmony, right? Because they just,
yes.
from their descriptions of things like, the music of the spheres, which Lewis was also quite taken with, they all of it needs to work together. So our here's our moon and the rainbow, but going to our it's got Christ as creator again. But going to the image of the rose window with this is the North Rose at Paris, one of the ones that survived the fire, hooray. And it's also a Mary window because Mary sits in the center of this. It's also, as I think I've shown in a recent piece I've been working on for a while, behind this great encyclopedic poem that this grammarian John of Garland wrote to show Mary in this kind of system. I just persuaded myself that's even better than I thought. And it's called, and the rose itself is called the alchemist's rose because
I love that name.
so many like connections, geometric connections. Medieval ages, they love geometry, they love system, they love light, they love beauty, they love color, and they rejoice in this sense that, seen correctly, all of this fits together in this beautiful harmonious whole.
Sacred geometry.
Exactly. So, if you can't see the world in this way, no wonder you're doom scrolling. And what's interesting is this isn't necessarily at odds with, as we were just talking about, some of the things that we have actually seen through the lenses, the telescopes and the microscopes, of like, scientists often say, the more they study, the more beautiful everything gets. Well, yes, but we seem to be missing an essential feature of why. and the more reasons of why we lost it and so forth when we maybe come along. But what we want to talk through in the next few weeks. We'll see how long it takes. We might scroll and do something else or have some guests or something like that. But one of our major um, missions, is it a mission? We're your tour guides, right? We want you to have fun, right? We were here for we're here for you to have fun. We want to show you this world that the medieval Christians are celebrating and designing within and thinking within, and that Tolkien and Lewis themselves considered absolutely and utterly real.
And it's the world we're still living in. I think it's important to remember.
And it's the world we're still living in. You want to find that enchanted world. It's like, what's the Pirates of the Caribbean? You best start believing in
Fairy stories, you're in one.
best start believing in the medieval discarded image model of the universe. You're in it.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. So everybody, if you like this kind of exercise, if you're just hanging on for that serotonin hit after really thinking and wrestling with a difficult problem for some time, this is the podcast for you. And we are very happy that you're here. We're very happy to everyone in the chat who's joined us tonight. If you guys are watching this video and you like it, please, 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 please start telling YouTube, because we really would like more people to see our videos. You got to like, you got to subscribe, you got to check out our playlists, which you can find on our homepage, newly designed, ordered, renamed, clarified, we hope, so that you can get yourself into some of the previous episodes of the cruise and sail with us across it's like the Pacific with all of that water back to the place where we can find everything harmoniously chiming together. Thank you for joining us. Good night.